Hi everybody, welcome to this late night show where we're going to be talking about branding, marketing, and of course exploring the similarities between the Caribbean and wonderful Peru. So my name is Craig Powe and I'm the CEO of Adtelligent and of course the host of Adtelligent TV. And I'm joined today by first my lovely father, Sheldon Powe, who is the owner of Innovate 10X, as well as the director of my company, Adtelligent, and my new partner, Alejandro, who is also a CEO of a marketing agency called Partners, who has just signed a deal to come to Jamaica and the Caribbean to help and export brands.
Okay, so Sheldon Powe, the CEO and founder of Innovate 10X, a company that's about a little bit over 4 years old, but we are considered a fintech company. We do a lot of work with banks, insurance and investment companies. We build platforms as well for the manufacturing and distribution companies. So I'm very happy to be here for the first time in Lima, Peru. Sorry that I don't speak Spanish, I really have to learn Spanish. I'm isolated, thinking that because I speak English from Jamaica and traveling to the US and Canada. But most of the Latin and Caribbean market, as you know, they speak Spanish. So that's one of the first things I want to share. It's like my son, I encourage you to learn Spanish.
Alejandro.
Hi, my name is Alejandro Agois. I am the CEO of Partners Brand Design. We are a brand communications firm. We have been working in the Peruvian market for almost 20 years. We specialize in brand strategy, brand communications, brand design, packaging, editorial design, and digital design. And as Craig just told you, we just signed a deal to come to Jamaica and try to share knowledge and our services in the Caribbean market, which is very close to me because my mom's from Puerto Rico, so I've been traveling to the Caribbean since I was a kid. My dad's Peruvian, lived here all my life, went to school in the States. So I have a little, understanding of the North American market, Latin American market, and the Caribbean market. Very excited to be talking with you.
The average person, when they think about Latin America from the perspective of Jamaica, they think of something that's very far, strange, and foreign. Mostly because of this thing called language. It's a real barrier, Spanish and English. When we look at the largest companies in Jamaica and where they're exporting to, they usually export to the diaspora, that's the Jamaican diaspora in US, Canada, and of course, UK, but all of the other places where the British actually colonized. We're talking about Guyana, Belize, other small Caribbean islands. And they do really well in there because the culture is similar and the language barriers are low. But this place, Peru, Panama, Costa Rica, the DR, we're not doing as much to export to them. And we start to wonder why. Why is that? But as I've come to this country and I've spoken with the people, and me and Alejandro spent hours and hours having conversations about our culture, we found that we're actually quite similar. So Alejandro, after talking to me, tell me some of the points that you realize of our cultural similarities.
I would say one of the big similarities is that we suffer from the same ailments.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are countries that have had independence for not that long ago. We had it for 200 years, you guys a little bit less. Mm-hmm. We were both colonized. We've had some struggles economically. We have complicated political structures in our countries. People don't really trust politicians. They don't really trust institutions, even though they want to. But then again, we also are a culture of people who want to work hard and just push forward. We have different ethnic backgrounds, but other than that, when we started talking the other day at my house and we started talking about our struggles, we had very common struggles.
Exactly.
I would say that's the one thing that's very much in common. Like I told you when you got here, we don't know that much about Jamaica, and I think one of the reasons why is, like you said, language. So what do we know about Jamaica? And I told you you were here, it's like everybody's gonna ask you about Bob Marley, because music transcends language. We love Bob Marley in Peru. I think in Latin America, everybody loves Bob Marley. But we are not as fluent in other parts of your culture. So we have a lot of influence from the music from Puerto Rico, from DR, from Cuba, from Panama. And we don't have that much influence from your culture. And I think it has to do with the language thing. And other than that, the way we see business and the way we see life and the way we see how to engage with customers and clients, it's very similar. It's just not that different. And also, you have one big advantage because you speak English.
Yep.
You could speak Dutch, you could speak, French, and it will be even way more complicated because the business world speaks English. That's the international language of business. So I think you maybe have a cultural barrier, but business-wise, that shouldn't be a problem because most people speak English. So there's an opportunity for you guys in the Latin American market for sure. And it's a huge market. It's a huge, huge market.
Now, Dad, you know, this is his first time really traveling to Latin America, really into like a city. I think he's done Cancun before. He's been on Puerto Rico when we were younger. But those are really the tourist spots. That's not really, you know, LATAM, like in terms of feeling and living. What was your first impression of Lima coming off the airport and then being in the city for the first night?
I'm very impressed. I feel that I'm in a first world country. The roadways, the highways, the sky high-rise buildings again surround us here. We don't have that in Jamaica as yet. I mean, but the level of, I don't know how many years it took to build this kind of skyrise, but it looks like a modern city. There's a lot of commerce happening here. You know, first impression is great. I'm very happy to be here. The people are very friendly. They are beautiful also.
We see a bus that takes people on a route. And this route bus literally has a lady conductor jumping off of it, trying to collect the customers to come in and jump. Just like something in Halfway Tree. They have route taxis here too. They have the same thing. They have the same exact structure and the same type of problems that we see. The culture, in terms of how they think through their problems, they might look a little bit different, of course, they speak a different language, but it really is very similar. We have spoken about so many things, about how government thinks and how business has to go and the mentality of business people, and it literally matches back to back what has happened in Jamaica. But here's one of the problems that I see, which Jamaica has not benefited from. So unlike Peru and probably Colombia, because everyone doesn't speak English, that middle class population couldn't just get up and leave and go to Miami or Florida or New York when things got tough. So a lot of people did leave Peru, and a lot of people have left Colombia, a lot of people left all these other countries, but there were a lot of people who stayed and basically had to figure things out and learn business. So maybe when our countries were starting off, maybe our economies were similar, but their economy has really grown, especially in the last, 15, 20 years.
30 years.
30 years or so has really taken off and modernized. Like where we're in Miraflores 15 years ago, it wasn't like this.
No.
Right now it's completely different. Of course, restaurants everywhere. But these are small business owners, just like the ones in Jamaica who are trying to take their business larger. Small to medium, as Alejandro says, that's okay. But you've said it to me, to go from medium to large, that's the problem. It's very hard to do that in Peru, but it's also hard to do that in Jamaica. And Alejandro, he's a guy who's been working with very, very large brands in Peru. Brands that, I mean, eclipse the size of the things I see in Jamaica. $3.5 billion US revenue or $1+ billion revenue because of how competitive the market is. So Alejandro, I want you to go into that story about the 90s and basically how the business structure was before and then why branding had to become such a crazy thing right after.
Between the 1950s and the 1980s, late 1980s, or early 90s, Peru was a closed economy. So it was really hard to import stuff, very expensive. Some things were even illegal. There were protections to local industries. We had a series of leftist government that said, no, let's promote local production by protecting it from everybody else. Mm-hmm. And that was great for the few industries that were in Peru. They made a lot of money. They didn't have to worry about quality. They didn't have to worry about presenting themselves with a good alternative. That changed in the 90s abruptly. New government changed everything and opened up the market. And what happened was that because it was still a big market, Lima is almost 11 million people, just Lima. A lot of brands, a lot of companies from Latin America, the US, and Europe started coming to Peru with a much more sophisticated offering. And what happened was a lot of people, a lot of companies that were not up to speed, they just went bankrupt. But the ones who stayed, they became really competitive because they had to learn fast to be competitive. They had to compete against European companies, American companies, Chilean companies, Brazilian companies. Mm-hmm. So what has happened in the last 30 years is not only that we've had an economic growth, an important economic growth, we've also had an important business growth. The way of doing business has gone from the who do you know to the what can you do. Large corporations are, even though they might be family owned, they're not family run. Mm-hmm. they get the best guy or the best woman for the job. So people are way more interested in social issues, in climate issues, in responsibility issues. So I'm not saying corporations are perfect in Peru, but they've come a long way from what they were. So what you see now when you talk to a company that's Peruvian based, that has either it's retail or mining or energy or transportation, they have a global worldview. They have global standards. People are highly educated. They've gone to Ivy League schools or the best schools in Europe.
Although I think Jamaica has definitely evolved. When I look at our packaging and where we are in terms of branding, some countries where it might be above. In Panama, I see that we're actually above in certain elements. Now in Peru, me and Alejandro went down to the supermarket and looked at basically all the open brands you can see. Some of the brands that we're talking about here have 90% of the actual local market, like the mayonnaise and some things like that. But it's crazy how sophisticated the brands look. Like we're drinking a regular craft beer that's not a popular brand like that. Is it's available. This is the domestic beer, like it's Pilsen, right? This is what most people would drink. But their marketing, their brand and feel, look and feel, when I walk through the supermarket, they're really awesome. These are really high quality stuff. The thing about where we are in Jamaica right now, in my opinion, is that we're in that stage where companies basically have been able to live for a very long time without massive competition from the USA, Canada, the UK, because we've been a small market for some things, and they haven't had that much interest to compete and go inside, because who understands Jamaica? I have spoken to one of my friends down at one of the investment firms in the UK. He said, Craig, sometimes we look at what we call small markets and say, should we invest in there? How do we do things? But to be honest, if we were a big corporation like KFC, right? And we're saying, I want to invest in Jamaica. I need to open something up there. The honest truth is they can't manage to do it themselves because they don't know where the hell to put the branches. They don't know what the store is. That's a local person who's going to be able to do that. So hence why KFC is going to be owned by some local dude who actually understands the market and knows, this is a place where all this foot traffic comes in and this is where you can put the store. That makes sense. Now, if an international firm sees that and says, hey, right now, Jamaica has KFC, it has Popeyes. Basically, they don't need any other chicken brands, right? Because it doesn't make any sense. They're already saturated. Only a local person will probably know, actually, no, the brand loyalty to the thing is high, but if I do X amount of marketing and put it in this store as another chicken brand, it will literally jump up and make a bunch of money, right? Thanks to technology like ChatGPT and Mid-Journey, other stuff like that, the cost of exploring ideas is rapidly going down. So that means we're actually going to be facing a coming invasion of foreign brands and foreign companies that decide to do more with less labor.
So if we're trying to compete, there's Island Grill and all of that, certainly we have to step up in terms of how we brand, not only to our own people, right? But again, if we want to break into other international markets, then we really have to understand their market, and then, as you said, pay attention to branding. Now, I've been learning a lot about branding since I've been here. It's something I really and truly, I didn't really think about how important branding actually is. So, it's really, when people come in, you have to understand that you already you make up your mind of what you're gonna do depending on the appearance or the messaging. So you have to think about this very carefully. And I know, Craig and talking about it, I don't think a lot of Jamaican companies are doing that because we've been able to make money despite ourselves. But with competition coming, we have to be prepared for it.
Exactly. So hence why we went and got this deal. Because, most of you guys know me as a security guy, that kind of technology nerd dude who's really in the forefront of weirdo, is your website going to be hacked and on the news talking about stuff like that. But what I saw basically from the invent of ChatGPT was that there was a time bomb coming for Jamaica of at max 2 years where all of the companies that used to find us hard to explore don't even need to write the ideas themselves of how to explore it. They can use ChatGPT as an extension of their brain to finish their marketing plans, finish their business plans, and get things done quickly without all of that dynamic local expertise because ChatGPT can go read all of the documents and make things happen. That's crazy. It means a lot of us might actually end up out of work if we don't start preparing ourselves and making our companies ready. That's just the truth. And Brand Jamaica, globally, is a strong brand. But Alejandro always says to me, but what are you telling people to do with it? Just because people know Bob Marley, that's great. At least they know how to listen to music. For example, I went to a director's house today, who's I think one of the top grossing directors in Peru. It was 3 million tickets sold. And real story, kid you not, we walk into this house, this guy is playing Bob Marley. Okay, that sounds fine. That's Bob Marley, everybody knows Bob Marley. All of a sudden he's starting to play like Peter Tosh. I'm like, okay, so he's like even more deep. But then he gets on to like Gregory Isaacs, and I'm like, yo, he's literally playing like Night Nurse. It just straight up regular Jamaican music. And he's like, yo, I love Jamaica. This is great. I love reggae. I love this. It's great. And then I have a great conversation about him, Eco Mouse, and all these other artists. They know about that. I said, wow, right? You didn't know, right? You didn't know.
I love reggae here, man. The thing about a country brand, it's very hard to do a country brand because you need to pretty much distill a country into a few concepts and a few identities and a few promises that, yeah, they're gonna leave some people out, that's for sure, because every country is complex and it has, history, but you're trying to position yourself in the world stage, okay? So when people think about your country, what do they think? What can that brand add to whatever you're selling? So we went through a process maybe 10 years ago called Marca Peru, Peru brand, and we redesigned it and we created a story around it. And it has to do with certain things that we believe that we not only have a upper hand on most people in the world, but there are true values of our brand that if you put a brand behind it, people will believe in. So cultural tourism in Peru is huge. We have Machu Picchu and Cusco and the Incas and stuff like that. So we have a lot of tourism and that brand has helped people come to Peru and understand the culture and see wonderful things. Food, we export food all over the world, cuisine, just regular food, pisco, stuff like that. We have a whole thing with fashion design and fashion and textiles. We have some of the oldest textile heritage in the world. We have textiles from 4,000 years ago. So what does that brand represent? Because Peru is huge. It has many different cultures. But we want to tell people, come to Peru, we have this. Enjoy Peru, we can bring that. And I think you have something that's powerful because I think not only that you have a strong brand in the way that most people would associate Jamaica with probably certain things, but these are all positive things. I think if you ask a regular guy in the street now walking here, what's their feelings, what when I think about Jamaica, I would probably guess more people will say happy.
Yep.
And that might not be true, but that's the perception we have. So Jamaica is a happy, free, everybody is happy, and then yeah man, let's talk about that. That's how we feel about it. That might not be true, but I would rather have a brand, a country brand that is associated with happiness than I don't know, because not many countries have something that they can export and people go, I wanna go into that.
Exactly. I mean, here's some of the things I heard. First thing, Bob Marley. Of course. When they think Jamaica, Bob Marley. Then the second thing, Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt, the fastest guy in the world. You guys have that. Third thing, rum, Jamaican rum, pirates. I mean, all things are fast, fun.
Cool runnings.
Cool runnings. Yeah, Cool Runnings is a big movie, the Disney one. These are things that, as a brand, we can tap into them. But sadly, when I talk about jerk, no one really knows jerk. You know who knows jerk? Only people who've been to Jamaica before or have a circle to the brand. That means that they're literally nearby it or have friends who are Jamaican and have showed them. But outside of that, we haven't explored the world and told them about jerk so they understand what it is.
But let me tell you a story about that.
Yeah.
It's interesting because Peru has a huge cuisine.
Yeah.
But until the 90s, late 90s, a lot of people felt that it wasn't something that everybody would like to eat because it wasn't sophisticated like French cuisine or Italian cuisine was like. And then some chefs, especially this one guy called Gaston Acurio, he came over and said like, no, Peruvian food is amazing. We can work on presentation, we can work on stuff like that, but this is really tasty, good stuff. We don't have to prepare French food, we have to prepare Peruvian food. And that changed the whole country's perception of our own food. So somebody from our people had to come and say like, no. And he did something that was very smart. Instead of saying, I'm the best chef in Peru, he promoted everybody else. He's like, this is the best guy to do ceviche. He does the best lomo saltado. He does the best this. And he had a TV show that ran for like 10 years, and he promoted everybody. So everybody said like, yeah, I can cook well. I can do this amazingly. And now, like I told you, we have number 2 restaurant in the world is here. Number 9 restaurant in the world is here. And people believe that they can do that. And you'll have Peruvian food with Peruvian ingredients, with a different presentation, but it's Peruvian food.
The presentation is wonderful, you know, and I think especially in Lima, because we're close to the sea, there are a lot of seafood restaurants around here. And the scenery for the restaurants is also amazing. So we talk about this, the restaurants are selling an experience.
Right.
Right, it's not only the food. You go for the experience, you go for the scenery, you go for the service, you go for the presentation, you know, and on top of that, you're getting great food.
Me and Richie were out there today with Alejandro, and we went to a local rotisserie shop, which is something that's probably in every country, but this is Peruvian style. And they're using curly fries, which of course everyone can have, and they're also giving a salad, which of course everyone can have, and they're also giving rotisserie chicken, which of course everyone can have, but they're giving it in Peruvian style, plus with presentation. So the first thing we had was this beef appetizer. This thing was fantastic. It came with 3 sauces and was on a skewer, maybe 4 or 5 pieces of meat, thinly cut, beautifully cooked, absolutely juicy and delicious. We're eating these 2 pieces of beef, and after we're done, and we've dipped into 3 different sauces, it's a bit spicy. Alejandro asked me, how is it? I'm like, this is just great. He says, that is the heart of a cow you've just eaten. And I'm like, what? A heart of a cow? Like, really? Like, should I spit it out? And I'm
No.
I'm like, no, it tastes so damn good. But you see the presentation. And he goes in back and tells me about, this was food maybe from the days of the slaves, the Africans who were living in Peru. You know, they were the ones that were eating the heart because that was an unwanted piece of the meat. Just like in Jamaica, our history of eating things that other people don't eat, from chicken back to chicken neck. But where we have kind of stayed with our presentation of those food, of a cheap food, and we still eat it, they have taken that same thing and elevated it up into the presentation. And that's why it can be more expensive. And because they've elevated it on a skewer, and they've given it more flavor. Plus, the atmosphere around has this really cool shop vibe of like, you're in a kind of like, I guess a Nando's in England, right? And the chicken and fries come on an amazing plate that's served, that makes you feel like it's expensive. So no one would pay the same money in Jamaica for that, just because in Jamaica we're not serving it that way. But I love to hear what he said about one guy making that change and just saying, no, our food is good. Jamaican food is absolutely incredible. Everyone knows that it tastes good, right? But we need to be thinking about the presentation and how we can, you know, create that brand. There's only like a few brands in Jamaica that really have globalized themselves. Clearly Sandals is, like, in my opinion, number 1, and Red Stripe and I would say Appleton are number 2 and number 3. Those are the things that if I go other places, then people know about them. And then of course, Bob Marley and Usain Bolt by themselves can carry the whole of Jamaica, right? But what Sandals understood was exactly that. What does Jamaica mean? Happiness, reggae, music, and they've competed with the best. Sandals is a hotel that if you ask someone who's probably upper class in Peru, they maybe have heard about it already. If you ask anyone in England, they know about Sandals because they get what a great brand is. Hence why Sandals is not going to close down during COVID, and they can expand when everyone else is shrinking because they've put money in the brand. We are just having Alejandro here because Sandals can afford, you know, obviously the best people in the world. They're not going to just make anyone do it. They have the best in the world working on their brand.
You know, I mean, I've met quite a number of people here, and they all want to come to Jamaica. I think we could find an easy route, you know, to kind of encourage. I mean, me coming and encourage other Jamaicans to come to Peru. I mean, it's my first time here, and I'm planning to come back. I'm serious. The tourist industry, we need to target. I know we target North America, Europe markets and all that, but our own Latin American countries who are our friends in our back.
And they're brothers, they really are brothers and sisters.
And the thing about tourism and food is that this is the best place to try the food. So I haven't had the pleasure to try Jamaican food. I'm sure we'll try it soon when we are over there. But so yeah, Sandals is a very well-known brand, and you guys, I don't know if that's a strategy or whatever, but like, so the Dom Rep has had a strong influence in Peru, and so has Mexico. And I think the language barrier helps. It also helps that there's a direct flight from Lima to Punta Cana, or a direct flight to Cancun, or a charter flight. But I'm 100% sure that Jamaica will be a tourist destination that every Latin American person will go to because you have that plus. So one of my best friends, huge reggae fan, he went for his honeymoon, and he went with his wife to Bob Marley's house. He said, that's the first thing I'm doing. I'm going in, I'm going to Bob Marley's house, and then I'm going to the beach. You know, and he's a huge fan. And I think a lot of people would really love to go to Jamaica, not only for the beaches, because there's a lot of beaches everywhere, but there's a culture there. There's something else there. It's not just sandy beaches. The whole Caribbean has great beaches. You have something else. You have a culture. You need to exploit that a little bit more. You need to let people know why Jamaica is different than the Dom Rep, than St. Lucia, the BBIs, or whatever. You need to Aruba is probably a beautiful place, not that much culture compared to Jamaica.
Of course.
So what else can you bring to the mix? Music, great. You want to listen to reggae? Great, that's the place to go. You want good vibes, people that are happy. You want dancing, you want good beer, you want good rum. What else do you have? You have got great food, because that's one of the Achilles heels of all inclusives. Food not that great.
Yeah.
So what can you do that makes it no, if you want to go into an all-inclusive, Jamaica's number one. If you like food, Jamaica's number one than everybody else. But you need to sell it. You need to package it well, like you said, great presentation, have an experience, not just the food, the experience, and then people would love it. Because when you go to a place where you're relaxed, where you're happy, where you have great music, you have a good beer, or a nice rum, and then they say, here's your food, and it's well served, well presented. Even if the food is not that great, you're in such a great state of mind, and the experience is going to be so amazing. They were like, oh, you have to go to Jamaica. The food was amazing. The people were so happy, so nice, so friendly. The beaches were amazing. The rum was amazing.
And this is exactly why, one of the things we would love to work on, because it would be with the Minister of Tourism on a Brand Jamaica or Visit Jamaica campaign for, of course, LATAM, and creating that brand there, because we know that you guys are doing such an excellent job with Visit Jamaica in the US, and of course you're exploring Europe, because we see the numbers growing. We see those flights growing. We have to hats off to the Minister for that. But of course, we are here and we're saying there are people that exist who have money, who would love to come to Jamaica, but they're not sure of it. We need to convince them. We have to spend money and time to do that. But separately, when we look at Brand Jamaica, and this is where we get really honest, some of the products that we have, which are excellent in taste and excellent in quality, we just need to spend a little bit more time to think through those brandings, to see how they can become more exportable, so they can cross the market from just that diaspora audience to the larger thing.
Britain exports more money from rock and roll than it does from coal.
You see?
Okay?
Yeah.
So I can see you with that. So if there was a strong music production industry in Jamaica, you could export that, no problem. Puerto Rico has that.
Yeah, of course.
I used to kid with my cousins that when Despacito came out, that was 1% of Puerto Rico's GDP. Because it was
with one song.
With one song.
Yeah.
I think that's something, tourism obviously is something you can export to the world and have people come in. But from what I had gathered, all your foods and spices, I see a lot of similarities with what the Indians have done with their spices and their food. Look, I was reading the other day in the Guardian in the UK that chicken tikka masala is now the number one dish in the UK. It surpassed fish and chips.
Whoa.
Why? Of course, there's a lot of Indians in the UK, but that's not the reason. The reason is that, British people love chicken tikka masala because it's much more flavorful than fish and chips. So you can do that. So you were showing me this Jamaican store in the UK.
Yeah,
it's called Jamaican patties, right?
Padico, yeah.
So, and I saw it, I was like, oh, this looks cool, sophisticated, looks very Jamaican.
Yeah.
So if more of those things were created where you can actually export the experience of the Jamaican food on a more global presentation and scale, I think that would be great, because it's happened to me in the Caribbean sometimes that food is great, but the presentation is very homemade, which isn't bad, but for tourism and stuff like that, it's this is just too big or too much food. It's you can just do it a little bit better in presentation. The taste is the same. Yeah. So I think that's something you can also do to explore, and I'm sure there's other stuff that you can explore. For sure, but just out of my head from what I know, I think those are things that you can explore, and they will be.
So we're looking at the high value add products and the things of that nature that basically we have a brand already, and the diaspora might be taking it, but looking at changing the packaging, changing the marketing of it, and of course the brand identity, so it immediately communicates what the possibilities are and what to actually do with it. Because that's something Alejandro says to me. He says, Craig, if I see a jerk sauce, and I'm like, okay, it's a jerk sauce, but no one has actually taught me what am I supposed to do with jerk sauce. Hence maybe why only diaspora will be buying the jerk sauce and people who have been to Jamaica who have, really eat the products and love the hotel. But someone like Alejandro, who has never been to Jamaica yet, will not buy it. But when you have sriracha, right, a global brand that is in basically every country now, right, people have been shown what to do with it. You put it on sauce, you make it a dip. You've been doing this. They've spent time and energy to get that little bottle with what the roof's on it everywhere in the world now, and people are using it. And that's not necessarily the food culture of our country, of Jamaica, but people are buying sriracha. So all we're trying to say is, at the end of the day, we are going to be helping people in the Caribbean. If you already know us, you can obviously email us at info@adtelligent.net or reach out to us on our website so we can talk to you about your brand identity.
So for us, a brand is a value promise, a promise of value that's always kept. Okay, that means I have to clearly define what value you're gonna get out of my brand and then keep that promise. Okay, and the best way to do it, and that's how we do it, is that we look at the real you and not your perceived you. And it's almost like psychoanalysis. I was telling you about that because when you start a company, when you start a corporation or whatever, there's so many moving parts that you get fixated on those moving parts. And maybe you have like a really super streamlined process of production, and then you believe that is your differentiation. And that's not true. Nobody cares about that, not the people. It's important for your chain, of course, it will make you money, but people don't say, oh, I'm buying that soap because their production chain is so amazing. Nobody cares about that. So what we try to do is really find the value on the products, on the brands, and then just find a really good way to show it visually and through communication. And then once we have that, we have to implement it consistently and coherently so that people understand who you are, and then people know what makes you different from everybody else. What are your core values, and why should I buy you, and why should I commit to you? And that's the essence of branding.
And these guys are experts. As I said, 20 plus years of experience, right? As well as when I see the material, to be honest, it's way above anything that Adtelligent could produce in terms of branding, identity, and graphic work. I do think we're still very high standard, world standard, and especially in some of the digital deep data stuff, right? And Alejandro, you've seen some of the things we do. Yeah. It really is good at that part, right? But this man, I mean, his stuff is crazy when it comes to the actual graphics. So to wrap up the video, we're out here in Lima, in Miraflores, wonderful, what do you call, sky view apartment with a wonderful nightlife and city place behind. We're 360 view, right? Yeah. Telling Jamaicans and other Caribbean people that this place is friendly, it's welcoming. It's welcoming for single people, single women, single men, also single moms. You can bring your child here. It's actually quite fun and safe. We have friends doing things like that too. It's great if you are a couple to vacation and actually have lots of food, lots of tourist stuff.
Very reasonably priced.
Yeah, it's really not expensive. And this is just a great place for you to come. So, if even nothing works out, we want to see more Jamaicans getting to know their brothers and sisters of Latin American countries, because the more of us that go out here is the more we'll actually be able to make business. If I didn't speak Spanish, I would have never met Alejandro, I would never try to do some of the things that we're doing now. And if I didn't end up speaking Spanish, I would have never been able to bring him back to Jamaica so he can offer services to you, right? So again, traveling is important, exposure is important. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more things like this, give us a comment, give us a like, give us a share. We have to actually know. And if you want to hear more from things like Alejandro, should we do a video like this when he's in Jamaica, somewhere else iconic, invite someone else to kind of join us? That's it.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.